Hey everyone, welcome back to Cardboard Hobbyists, the podcast for collectors, returnees, and anyone just stepping into the world of trading cards. I'm Quinn, and today I want to take you through my current state in the hobby, where I started, what I've learned so far, and where I think I might be headed. Just to warn you ahead of time, I'm doing this raw and in one take, so bear with me. If you're new to collecting or coming back after years away, this might sound familiar, but the hobby is exciting and it can also feel overwhelming. Figuring out what to collect, how to store cards properly, whether to grade them, and even how to sell and trade efficiently. So today I'll walk through my experience so far and what I'm learning along the way. Just a fair warning, I use the word collector a lot since the hobby refers to most of us that way. But I heard a great definition of my type of collecting the other day. Yes, I collect cards, but everything I have is for sale. It's just not all on sale. Like a lot of collectors who return to the hobby, I started with my old PC, my personal collection. It was fun to dig through these cards, not knowing what I'd find. Some were nostalgic, some were just bulk, and a few made me wonder, could this be worth something? And that led me to researching values and sorting my collection into categories, keepers, potential sales, and everything else. I don't have a lot of keepers, but I definitely had a lot of Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco, and Ricky Henderson cards. So right now, that's still in my keepers, but I'm sure at some point I'll get rid of those as well, as I'm not a holder of cards. But from there, I started to think about storage. I've started reading a lot about protecting my cards. I didn't have anything but binder sleeves as a child. So I picked up some penny sleeves, top loaders, and some card savers for, of course, future grading, which I've only used two of. But even if you're not grading, keeping the valuable cards protected is key. It's definitely something I've learned. It's a small investment. Literally, they're called penny sleeves because they're so cheap. But if you want to hold on to a card and keep it in great condition, possibly even sell it down the road, definitely kind of focus on storage. So this part of my journey is one a lot of collectors go through, starting with what they have, figuring out what to do next. And for me, the next step was trying to sell some of these. Selling cards, really selling anything, is a whole new world for me. I started researching platforms. There's a lot out there from eBay to COMC to TCG Player for more of your trading card game cards. I started watching videos on selling, reading and watching tips on how to package and ship cards safely. That was my biggest thing is, again, I had never sold any actual physical items, and so trying to ship them was a little intimidating. But eventually, I opened my own eBay store. You can find the eBay store under my name, Cardboard Hobbyist, over on eBay. I didn't want to price too high. Pricing was definitely the next hard part. I could list them, I could take a photo, I could get them posted, but I definitely wanted to see if I could sell some of those cards. And I didn't want to sit on those cards forever. But I also didn't want to undervalue them. I definitely wanted to see what kind of money I could get from some of these cards. And so that was kind of the next piece I'm still working on a little bit. And then I dove into grading. I was researching different grading companies, reputations, the hobbies idea of those grading companies, like flipping cards, PSA's the granddaddy. But if you want some nice slabs, you might want to lean towards, some of the SGC or maybe tag slabs for looks. But if you want the biggest money, definitely stick with your PSA. I did decide to submit my first two cards with PSA through my local card shop. They do a group bundling, so that was something else I learned about. I can, submit one or two here and there and not have to subscribe and get down too much into a rabbit hole. But that's definitely kind of next on the table for me as well, is to look at some more bulk grading and kind of getting into pre-screening my cards for grading, like looking at the corners and the edges and surfaces. I'm kind of fascinated by that piece next. But that was my first batch, and that was a learning experience for grading. I haven't actually gotten those back because it takes so long. And if you are unfamiliar with grading, it adds, a professional assessment to your card's condition. It guarantees a buyer use guarantee loosely with places like PSA and human subjective reviews, but it's supposed to infer quality of the card's condition, which can help protect it, keep its value, and you know what you're getting. It's not a fake card, which there are some out there. You can know when you're buying it. It's not a bent card. If you're getting a PSA 10, there shouldn't be creases and bent corners and things like that. Um, the grading process itself it does require some risk. Of course, you're paying for a grade, but you don't. There's no guarantee your card's going to come back, and that's where I want to start getting into that pre-screening and see if I can, look for those higher quality cards that I want to submit and try and get nines and tens. But there's always a chance it comes back lower, and you might have paid for a grading fee and a card that you can't recoup your value in. So definitely be looking at your cards and do understand pre-screening and what that means to you. And then after receiving those cards back, and they're called a slab when they're in their container, you can keep those. If you have your own collection and you're wanting to keep them on the shelf in a great looking slab, I actually want to submit and then try and sell. And the idea behind that is graded cards should, especially high graded cards or um, decent graded cards of really old vintage cards, should increase in value because there's that guarantee around it for a buyer. And so the idea being turning a raw card that I have into a higher value card through the grading process. And that's what I'm still testing. It's appealing to me, but I want to make sure I'm submitting the right cards and making it worth the cost before I get too far into it. Definitely don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on bulk submissions if I don't know what I'm doing yet. With all these moving parts, sorting old cards, selling, grading, ripping new boxes, I've also been trying to figure out where my real interest in the hobby lies. The hobby is huge. There's so many different ways to collect, so many different things to collect. One option I'm exploring is vintage cards. There's just something, special about those are old, hard to find cards, the scarcity around them. But of course, vintage also requires a lot of knowledge to avoid reprints, which they've done a lot, and they look just like them with some of the modern cards. You have to be careful of counterfeit cards, and also overpaying for those condition issues that I mentioned. Like you might find a Mickey Mantle, uh, that's amazing. There's so few of them, but if it's in absolutely terrible condition, you might not be getting the value you think you're getting. So say you definitely want to make sure I'm cautious around that. But I'm also drawn to a couple other areas. One being, finding valuable cards in dollar boxes and $5 boxes, and maybe through other people's old collections. There's just kind of a thrill to me about digging through, for cheaper cards that might have some value, or some unique cards that might have some value to someone. Of course, this approach takes time, research on card values and what's worth something, and then also kind of uh, understanding where I'm going to find those bulk, where I'm going to store those bulk items, things like that. So definitely something I'm playing with and kind of starting with some dollar boxes on. And then the other one I really like is, everybody has a niche, and I'm trying to take the wide perspective of just cardboard collecting and just the interest in the entire hobby of cardboard. But I am also kind of focusing on a niche, probably like One Piece. I've definitely been drawn into the One Piece Mania, the shows on Netflix, the game itself. I bought a starter pack just to play and played in one little tiny local tournament with me and one other person. But I'm just really love the artwork, the game itself, the kind of newness with it. It's fast growing, but it's only been out there. The game itself only been out there for a couple of years, but it has its fans for the last 20 years. So it's definitely interesting. So specializing in a specific set or franchise can help you stay focused and keep that interest going, and also kind of narrowing down where you spend your time and money because there's like I said, there's just so many possibilities out there in the cardboard world that sometimes it's hard to stay on point. So right now I'm experimenting. I love to experiment, and I'm trying to see what excites me the most. And I feel like that's kind of the fun of getting into cardboard and being a collector is just that exploring and that continuous search for what is keeping my interest out there. So that's where I'm at in the hobby right now, sorting old cards, learning how to sell, experimenting with grading, and trying to figure out what I really enjoy collecting. And I know a lot of collectors go through the same phase, and if you're in it too, you're not alone. It can be a lot, especially if you're newer back to the hobby. If you have any tips or stories from your own collecting journey, I'd love to hear them. And if you're still figuring it all out like me, stick around. We'll navigate this amazing hobby together. Until next time, happy collecting.